Good morning. Today's daf is daf Samach Dalid in Masechet Chullin. We are near the bottom of Samach Gimel Amud Bet, 1, 2, 3, 5 lines up at Tana Rabbanan. Let me share my screen and we'll get started. The where we've been discussing birds, and now we turn to eggs. And so we pick up again with fifth line from the bottom, and the Gemara quotes a brisa that details what the story is with eggs. So Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught in a brisa, Lochim beitzim min ha'ovdei kochavim b'chol makom, that you can buy eggs from non-Jews anywhere. Ve'ein choshin, and you don't have to worry. Lo mishum nevelus, not about it being an egg of a nevela, meaning an animal, that it was extracted from a dead animal, and so therefore it's considered a nevela. V'lo mishum treifos, and you don't have to worry that maybe it's similarly an egg that was extracted from an animal that was a treifa, and therefore is considered like a treifa. The Dilma, so that's the brisa. But what about it being a non-kosher
Oh,
bird?
is that non-kosher? What if it's non-kosher, like
Yeah,
an ostrich?
exactly,
An
exactly.
ostrich.
That's exactly the Gemara's
Oh, that's what
question.
I'm thinking.
Did Vidilma de'ov tamei ninhu? Maybe it's from a non-kosher bird. So Amar Avua de Shmuel. Shmuel's father highlighted this point and said that here's this case that we're talking about. But Omer shall ov ploni tahor, that he says that the idolater who's selling you the egg tells you that it's from a chicken, and you know that chickens are kosher, and so as a result, that's going to be the situation. As Rashi tells us, second to last Rashi on the daf, it's 7 lines up. Shall of ploni tahor. Va'anu yodim, we know she'oso of that bird that he references tahor. He's not the one who's who's just what Rashi's clarifying is when it says ba'omer shall of ploni tahor. It doesn't mean that he said all 3 words, that it was this particular kind of chicken and it is a kosher chicken for you. You're not relying him on the kashrut part. When he tells you that it's a chicken, the chickens are kosher. And so as a result, the chicken egg is a kosher egg. So again, v'anu yodim she'oto ov tahorhu, v'davar she'anu yicholim lahavchin, and we're dealing with a situation where we can check ulahevi beitze oto ov. We can bring other eggs from that bird. Lirot imdomin laelu, to see if they're comparable. So as a result, lo mishaker, he's not going to lie about it because he could be caught in the lie. The shall ov tahor. So why does he need to tell you that it is a specific bird? Let him just say that it's a kosher bird, and we can rely on the fact that we can bring other kosher eggs and see. Well, ihachi isle ishtamute. Well, but then you can't. He'll be able to escape. He'll be able to erase the situation. He'll be able to, as Rashi tells us, last Rashi on the daf, isle le'ushtamute, vilomar shall ofacher. Well, you bring a chicken egg and you say, listen, I can see that you're lying because this is not a chicken egg. And he'll say, oh no, it's an egg from a biddably bop bird that you never heard of, and it's a kosher bird. So he'll be able to excuse any effort you have to try and prove him wrong, because he hasn't testified about what kind of bird it is. And so therefore he'll be able to give you a non-kosher bird egg, and then justify it later by whenever you try to prove him wrong, he'll just say, "Oh, it's a different kind of bird." And so as a result, he needs to say up front what kind of bird it is in order for it to be a valid sale, so that you can trust him. So the livdok b'simanim. Well, 1 second. Why not check to see whether there are signs that it is a kosher egg? Because we're going to now learn a brisa. Now, the Gemara is going to detail this Tanya kesimani beitzim Kaksimani dagim. So just as there are signs for eggs, there are signs for fish. Now the Gemara is going to go in an aside, and then we're going to apparently quote another brisa. But there are two ways that we can understand that. Some commentaries take out some of the words to clarify that it's really a continuation of the brisa. So we'll read it as if there are two brises because that's the way it sort of simply reads. But know the fact that this may all actually be one long brisa with a brief interruption. But in any event, the Tanya
Well, why
B'Simone.
not say this is from a family of chicken, like we learned it several days ago? But we held that discussion whether a bird may be min mino, a family of from the ravens. So this person could say, yeah, this is what this our community holds, or so forth. The rabbanim in our area hold that this bird, it may not be the chicken but it's the family of chickens.
So, so you're what you're saying. So here's the story. So the issue is that if he says a bird that you recognize, and that remember that you have to recognize that it's a kosher bird, and so there is a piece that you, as the purchaser, an obligation that you have as a purchaser need to have. You meaning you need to have both the ability to bring a and chicken egg and check it and deal with it. So I think the answer to your question is that that would be if in fact that was what he was doing and playing games with Lemino and saying that, oh well, because that just as for non-kosher birds there could be multiple birds that are referred to as a chicken. I think that you would then immediately not trust the guy, and I think that's the whole point. The point is that if the end result doesn't has you not trusting him, so then that is going to, and therefore not buying any future eggs from him, that is going to be the way that you'll be able to rely on his saying something. But when you can't do that, and when he hasn't mentioned the bird, by definition, you can't do any real checking. Well, at least that's what our question's about to be, because now we're about to say, hey, aren't there signs for eggs? As the Brisa says, there are signs for eggs, just like there are signs for fish. Now, the Gemara interludes this and says, Simani, Dagim Salkadai, how could you talk about signs for fish? That's not true. Meaning that there are the signs for fish, those are written in the Torah. And you're suggesting that the signs of fish are actually derived from the signs of eggs. That's what it means when it says Kisamani Bates and Kaksimani Dagim, or at least that's what it would seem to mean.
No.
Because Napir Vikas Keses, the Torah tells us that you need to have a fin and a scale. So Ella Ema Kach Simane the Ubde Dagim. That these are that just as there are signs for eggs, so too there are signs for eggs of fish. And so that's what the Brisa is telling. So, all right, Vitanya Gabi Bates. And then we have, again, some take out these words because, and makes it all one long Brisa, but this makes it sound as if this is a second Brisa that we learned specifically with respect to the signs for eggs. Elu hain simani baitzim. Here are the signs for the eggs. Kol shekoderes va'agugoles. Any egg that is spherical and circular. Rosha echad kach kad, v'rosha echad chad. That one end is rounded and one end is pointier. Tahora, that is going to be a kosher bird. Shnei rasha kadim or shnei rasha chadim. If you have a sphere, a more ball-like egg, or one that has two pointy ends, sort of like a football, well then tamein, that is going to be a non-kosher egg. Chelbon, another category, another sign that you need to have. Chelbon mibachutz v'chelmon mibifnim. If when you open it up, you see that the white is on the outside and the yolk is on the inside, just like our eggs. Well, tahora, that's a sign that it's kosher. Chelmon mibachutz v'chelbon mibifnim. If the yolk is on the outside and the yellow part is on the outside, the chelbon, the white part is on the inside. Tmeya, well, then it's going to be a non-kosher egg. Chelmon v'chelbon ma'oravin zebazeh. If they're mixed together, well, then you know what? It's not even a bird egg. Biyadua shehi beitzas hasheretz. That is going to be an egg from a sheretz. There, shrutzim are a variety of creepy crawly creatures, some of which lay eggs, and so as a result, it's going to be a sheretz. So bottom line is that why are we even relying on this non-Jew's attestation about the bird at all? Let's just check to see whether or not the egg is kosher. So lo trichas dechatucho. So answer number one is we're talking about the situation where the eggs were already cut. So as a result, you can't tell what the shape of the egg is. Well, v'livdok b'chelmon v'chelbon. So check out if it's already cut, but you haven't mixed the egg. Well, then you can check to see whether the yolk is around the albumin or the albumin is around the yolk. If the albumin's around the yolk, you're kosher. If the yolk's around the albumin, you're not. No, betrufos bekara. Well, it's already been mixed into a dish, meaning you've already made scrambled eggs of it. So kahai gavna mizavdin minayu. But 1 second, if it's already been scrambled, are you even allowed to buy it from the non-Jew?
But isn't this bishul akum or something like that?
No, it doesn't. We don't have to have a bishul component here. It could just there are a lot of dishes where you mix a raw egg into it. But even if you don't even have a mixture yet, you just have the raw egg itself, but it's been scrambled again without cooking it. That won't be an issue either. So that's that's a simple understanding of how we can say that this is in fact not checkable any longer. And so that's what we're supposing right now. We're assuming that this is not a checkable egg any longer. But if that's true, are you allowed to buy a beaten egg from this non-Jew? You're not allowed to sell the egg of a treifa to an idolater. Why? Because we're worried that you can just buy it right back. Some other Jew will buy it right back from him and think that it's kosher. Because again, he can say, honestly, it's a chicken egg, and nobody would think that it's a treifa egg, and it's going to actually be a treifa, and it's not kosher. And so, Ella imkain trufa bakara. The one time you're allowed to sell him a treifa egg is if you've already beaten it in a bowl, if it's already mixed. Because we know that in that situation, the Jew's not going to buy it back. So lefika.
What's the havamina that the Jew would buy an egg from a non-Jew that mixed it? Well, that's the first part of that price. I don't understand that. Why would he do it?
Why? No, that we have the Brisa didn't say that he was buying a mixed egg. We say that in the case that we're talking about of the situation where we quote a brisa where we say we can buy eggs from idolaters everywhere and we don't need to be concerned as long as they told us what bird it's from. That's the situation that we have right now at this moment in the Gemara suggested that we're talking about buying a beaten egg. Now we are going to reject that suggestion because of this question. This question is going to cause us to come up with a new answer as to what is the case of our situation where we buy an egg, we don't need to worry about it being a nevela or a treifa, and we say that it's from, as long as the non-Jew who we bought it from tells us what bird it's from, and we know it's a kosher bird. So that's the situation that we're trying to explain. And so our initial explanation is that we're dealing with you bought it as a mixed egg, a scrambled egg, not a cooked scrambled egg, but a scrambled egg that's in a bowl. And now we're saying you can't buy such an egg. You're not allowed to buy such an egg from a non-Jew. And
Right.
and the reason that we know that is that you're allowed to sell a non-Jew a scrambled egg that's not kosher because you know that no Jew is going to buy it back from him.
Right.
So exactly. So as the right result, Ella Amar Rebbe Zera. So we are not right now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 lines down on Samach Dalet Amud Aleph, the first words on the line. So Amar Rabbi Ella Amar Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Zera says, here's the story of our brisa. So again, our brisa says that you don't need to worry about an avail or a treifa egg. And Shmuel's father told us that the situation is where the non-Jew tells you that the egg is from a chicken or another kosher bird that you know is kosher. And so as a result, in that situation, you can buy the egg. Bottom line, you can buy eggs from non-kosher supermarkets. So how do I know? So simanim lavdo raisa. No, the whole issue, the reason that we tried to say that it can't be talking about where you bought a whole egg is because we quoted another brisa to say that there are signs about a kosher egg. And so what Reb Zera says is that brisa is not telling you biblical law. As Rashi tells us, it's from the bottom of the narrow lines in Rashi, it's 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, about 21 lines up. Ella Amar Rabbi Zera Simanim Labdo Raisa. Hanach Simane Beitzim, the signs that we gave for kosher eggs, namely that one end is rounded and the other end is pointier. Lav halacha l'Moshe Sinai. That is not in the Bible itself, and it is not even something that is halacha l'Moshe Sinai, a tradition that we have from Moshe at Sinai. So ninhu v'lo samchinan alayhu, and therefore you cannot rely on that in order to determine whether an egg is kosher. And so here's the story. This is what's happening. De'ilo temahachi, because if you don't say this, if in fact you tell me that actually the signs that we saw in the brisa, that as long as the egg has one rounded end and one pointier end, and as long as the yolk is on the inside and the albumin is on the white part is on the outside, as long as that is true, it's a kosher egg. Well, Hada Amar of Asi Shmona Sfeikos Hain, when Rav Asi told us that there were 8 cases of birds that we're not sure about whether or not they're kosher, Livdok Vaveitzim did who? Just check their eggs. If their eggs have the right shape and the right configuration, well, then we'll know that they're kosher eggs, and therefore we'll know that they're kosher birds. So, Ella Shmamina Simanim Labdo Raisa. So the bottom line is that you cannot rely on the signs alone. So Ella Lamai Hilchasa Katanila. So what purpose are the signs of the eggs talking about? Hachikamar. This is what it means to say, and with this we can now understand our original brisa. Shnei Rasha Kadin O Shnei Rasha Kadin. If you have 2 ends that are both rounded, so it's a sphere, or they're both pointy, so it's like a football. O Chelmon mibachot v'chelbon mibifnim, or the yolk is on the outside and the albumin white part is on the inside. Vadai Tameya. That's enough to know that it's for sure not kosher. So the signs are really about what's not kosher. Reshe chad chad, reshe chad kad. If you have it's a nice alliteration here that if you have one end that is pointier and one end that is rounder, well then and you've got the right structure on the inside with the albumin around the yolk, well then v'amar lacha and v'amar lacha shel of ploni tahorhu, and the idolater who sells you the egg tells you the brand of the species of bird that it is from, so that you have the ability to check it, and he tells you the name of a kosher species, well then samach alei, then you can rely on him. The alei is based on Rashi amending the language here. Bistama, but if he does not tell you what kind of bird it is, maybe even he says it's a kosher one, but he doesn't tell you which kind it is, lo tismach alei, you cannot rely on him. De'ika de'urva de'dami l'diona, because there are oraves that have, we'll call it ravens, but they might not be, but in any event, there are some non-kosher birds that are similar to kosher birds in terms of their eggs. And so as a result, we know for a fact that you cannot rely on shape alone. So Amar Mar Chelbon
So
v'chel.
okay. So this presupposes that one has to open this egg to know where the chelbon is, where the chelmon
Of
is,
course,
right?
yes,
So if
absolutely.
that's the case, well, at some point, isn't this about tashkit? You open 50 eggs to see what it is, and you're destroying eggs, then, right?
Well, you only open it when you need it. I don't understand.
No, but you're going to decide whether you're going to buy it from him, use it, and he tells you this. But you open it, and then you find, well, this one is not kosher. Then he
No,
gives
no,
you, and then you open another one. You open another one. This
well,
is
I assume that we're dealing in small communities. So you bought the egg. He's likely the only egg seller in the marketplace. And you go and you take a receipt from him. And now you go home and eventually when you use the egg and you cook it and you break it open and you see that it's got the wrong structure, so you keep the egg in whatever container you have it. You bring it back to him and you show it to him and you say, "Listen, you've sold me a non-kosher egg," and you stop buying eggs from him forever now and ever. And so that hopefully he gives you your money back. But if not, at least you've now known not to buy eggs from this guy because he's not a reliable person.
okay, but I'm looking at it a little different. I'm looking at checking it to determine whether you're going to rely on him and buy it from him, and
No,
then
no, no.
but you're opening the egg.
Obviously, presumably he's not going to allow you to break the egg before you buy it. You buy it, you break it, you buy it. That's the so you're gonna and of course in those days, you bought an egg. It was certainly a more of an investment. You're not going to break it right there. You want to make sure to bring it home and not lose it along the way.
I don't
So
know. I hear what you're saying, but I can look at it the other way. You want to make sure that because
yeah,
he's
but you,
telling you
you
this
just
bird, you're gonna
highlighted the fact that how could, I mean, again, I can see why you would say that because, of course, you want to buy something that's reliable, but then you've got a whole bunch of broken eggs, and you
exactly.
better need to use them right away. So, all right, so maybe you just bought eggs only when you need them. But in any event, the bottom line is that we've explained the situation. Why is it that you can't just rely on the signs to determine whether it's kosher? Because the signs alone are not enough. And so as a result, if you have a situation where where the person tells you the type of egg it is, so as a result there will be a possibility of your confirming the right size, the right egg. So then if as long as it also has the right shape and right structure, then you can rely on the non-Jew. And that's the combination of these different prices.
But how does this apply to a supermarket? You don't know who the seller of the egg is. You walk in there and
What are you talking
the
about? The seller of the egg is the supermarket. The supermarket is presumably owned by non-Jews, and so as a result, you're buying it from a non-Jew. But fortunately, all of our eggs say that they're chicken eggs, and so we can say that you're buying it from a non-Jew. The non-Jew is confirming that it's a chicken egg, and so as a result, you can buy it. Now, there's extra precautions here in the United States because the FDA checks the eggs, et cetera, et cetera. And so, the point is that it's way more reliable in the United States than in most situations. And of course, many eggs probably have a hashgacha on them. So it's a super duper reliable. But the bottom line is even if they didn't have a hashgacha, if the person who's selling it to you says that it's a chicken egg, well, then you can buy it from them because you have the ability to compare it to another chicken egg and know that in fact it is an accurate statement. And you now know the signs of the kosher egg, that it's got the shape that it has to have and the structure, internal structure that it has to have. So absolutely, that's what this is highlighting, that you can buy an egg from a non-kosher supermarket. Now, obviously, I would tell you that if you actually are getting an egg and you're not 100% sure about the species from which the egg came, well, then you probably shouldn't buy it. So, all right, but in any event, Amar Mar. So we said during the course of our discussion, Chelbon v'chelbon be'orvin zeh b'zeh b'yadua shehi beitzas hasheretz. As an aside, we saw that if the albumin, the white, and the yolk are mixed together, well, then that tells you that it is a sheretz. So, Lamai Hilchasa, why is that a relevant fact? What does that tell us such that is useful for our information from a halachic perspective? So, Amar Rav Ukva Bar Chama. So, Rav Ukva says, Rav Ukva, the son of Chama, says, so, Lomar She'im Rikma V'Nikva. If, in fact, this egg had formed an embryo inside it, and its shell now was had a hole in it. So now we have a dead sheretz right there in this egg. Mitama b'ka'adasha. It is going to create tuma with the size of a lentil. Now, it is important to note, and by the way, those changes from the parentheses to what I read is in the Masoras Hashas. So that's just where those changes came from. But in any event, it's important to know that when it comes to shkatzim, it is there are only certain ones, 8, that convey tuma in that convey tuma in their dead form as the if there's a size larger than a lentil, and so this will tell you is what Rav Ukva is saying, that in fact because the egg has this mixed albumin and yolk together, it is an indication of a sheretz. And if it now forms an embryo, or if there's also an embryo in there, and it's the size of a lentil, now it will also convey tuma. So Maskif lo Ravina asked the question, Vidilman did nachash. 1 second. The snake also lays eggs, and the snake is not one of the 8 shrutzim. And so as a result, a lentil-sized dead snake does not convey tuma. So how do you know that in fact this is not a snake egg? So Ella Amarava, so we reject the tuma comment, but rather she'im rikma v'achla. No, the point is that if the egg developed into an embryo and then you ate it, loka aleha mishum sheretz hashoretz al haaretz, the lashes that you're going to get is based on the prohibition of a sheretz that creeps on the ground. Meaning, Rashi tells us, third to last narrow line in Rashi on Samach Daled Amud Aleph, hashoretz al haaretz. If this brisa had not told us that in fact this egg that it contains the mixed albumin and yolk together, and you don't actually have them separate with the yolk on the inside and the albumin on the outside, or vice versa, Ella. And it didn't tell us that means that the egg is from a sheretz. Ella Tameya Stam. It just told us that just like when the yolk is on the outside and the albumin is on the inside, it's just Tameh. Well, Havamina, I would have thought that both situations are dealing with birds. Mishum of Tamehu de Asira. That it is because this egg is actually from a non-kosher bird. Ubai, and why does it all matter? So this is the next line of Rashi. Ubai la asruye bei mishum sheretz ha'of. And therefore, if it were in fact a bird egg, I would need to warn the person that before he eats the egg that and then violates the Torah and now is going to end up with lashes, assuming that there are 2 witnesses, that in fact it's the egg of a flying, creepy, crawly creature. So meaning it's a sheretz that flies rather than a sheretz that crawls. So as a result, the amru bei mishum sheretz haaretz lo lucky. And if I gave him the sheretz haaretz warning, he wouldn't even get lashes because it's not the right warning. And so that's why the Torah, the Brisa needs to tell us that, you know what, this is actually a sheretz. And therefore, you need to warn him with the sheretz warning, not the sheretz ha'of warning, the sheretz hashoretz al haaretz warning, and not the sheretz ha'of warning. So that's the reason that it matters. And so as a result, so we back into the Gemara, third to last line, last 2 words on the line.
Well, what's a sheretz ha'of? What kind of example is that?
Every non-kosher bird is would be part of the sheretz ha'of category, I believe, And well, actually,
But I thought
I'm
it's
not. No, no, no,
Sheretz
no,
and
no, maybe
Sheretz
not.
al
Maybe
Haaretz.
not. Maybe not. Maybe not. The Sheretz HaOf category could, is things like, mosquitoes, flies, everything that flies that is not a bird is going to be in the Sheretz HaOf category.
But then
Uh,
that's not an oath, though. It's a Sheretz.
Yes, that's true, but here,
Now, you could say Sheretz a fifth. That the Sheretz something that flies, but not call it a Sheretz a oath.
well, that's what the Torah calls them. The Torah refers to Sheretz HaOf and to Sheretz HaShoretz. And so as a result, the bottom, even though the penalty is the exact same, the point is that you would need to, the point is that based on this Gemara, the Rambam rules that a non-kosher bird embryo, because it cannot fly yet, is prohibited not based on it being a non-kosher bird, but on it being a non-kosher sheretz ha'of. And so it's part of that category, even though, as a result. And so the point is that you need to give people the right warning. And I would have thought that just like an embryo of a bird gets a sheretz ha'of warning, therefore so too would this egg with a mixture of the albumin and yolk together, being mixed together, integrated together, and not separate. So too would this egg get that. And the answer that the Gemara is saying is no, it doesn't get that warning. If the albumin and the yolk are mixed together, it gets the Sheretz HaShoretz Al Haaretz warning, because that's a different warning, even if the penalty is the same. So back into the Gemara, second to last word on the third to last line. My area de Tameya. Why does the specifically tell us about the a tame egg? Afil to Oranami. Even a kosher egg, you're not allowed to eat the embryo. And so as a result, what's the special situation that you're now telling me about the mixture of albumin and yolk, even if the egg is a completely kosher egg? If you eat the embryo, it's a problem. Titania, kol hasheretz hashoretz al haaretz. What is it? What is the Torah teaching by including the word kol, that every sheretz that creeps on the ground is considered prohibited? As we turn to Samach Dalet Amabet, l'rabos efrochim shalom niftachu einayhem, that we're dealing with chicks that haven't yet opened their eyes. So an embryo is such an situation. And so as a result, that's the situation that's prohibited. And therefore, even a kosher bird would be not kosher in that situation. So yes, you're right, the Gemara points out, but that's not actually a biblical situation. Midrabanan, it's a rabbinic point. Oh, what about the pasuk that we just cited? After all, we cited kol hasheretz hashoretz al haaretz, and then we said that that's what teaches us that chicks that haven't yet fully developed are not kosher, even if they're from a kosher animal. Ukra asmachta ba'alma. No, the pasuk is just a reliance. We're just relying on that pasuk, but it isn't actually the true source. We're just a way to help you remember. All
So,
right.
but this pasuk is called Shoretz Shoretz al Haaretz. Is we just said a few moments ago that there's a difference between a Shoretz Haaretz and Shoretz Ha'of, and now we're using this pasuk that says call Shoretz al Haaretz to speak about a bird embryo. But so now we're mixing these two concepts.
That's I highlighted that a few moments ago, but I did it quickly, so let me highlight it again. According to the poskim, they understand that a bird before it can fly. It's interesting to question whether or not, like the dodo bird, would have been also considered a sheretz ha'of because it doesn't fly, or whether if once it's mature, it's considered a bird. But in any event, the bottom line is that embryos are considered sheratzei ha'of, and so as a result, that is the way this is being understood. Meaning, you're absolutely right that what we're highlighting is that a sheretz ha'of can turn into an oaf. That some shretzei ha'of, like a fly, mosquitoes, bigger bugs, what are they called? Dragonflies, and the like. Those are what I think of classically as shretzei ha'of. They're the creepy crawly things, just that fly, but they also include embryos and chicks before they open their eyes. Whether they're kosher or not kosher, they are going to be not in the oaf category, but in the shratzea oaf category. And so you're exactly right that it does, that there seems that these animals are going from one category to another category during the course of their lives.
Right,
So
I understand that, but the pasuk that you're quoting, that the Brisa quotes, is shoretz ala aretz. It doesn't say shoretz ala o. It's talking about those dafka that are on the
yes.
ground.
I now I understand your question. You're absolutely right, and maybe that's the reason that it's just an asmachta that it isn't a halacha midoraisa. That in fact, maybe if it also had that same language of kol hasharetz, kol hasharetz haof. Language, maybe we would actually say that it was a biblical prohibition. This is just a way of highlighting the fact that we also prohibit this chicks. But you're absolutely right that that chick would be is really a sheretz ha'of issue and not a sheretz hashoretz. Absolutely, you're a great point. Great point. Again, like I said, maybe that's in fact the explanation for why it isn't actually, because it sounds like a great drasha. So, but it isn't an actual drasha because it's not actually, because bird chicks, baby birds, before they develop and are able to fly, they are still considered they're considered sheretz ha'of. And so as a result, that's the situation, and that's why this isn't actually a good limud. So in any event, Tanu Rabbanan, having now identified kosher eggs, we have what if you boil a bunch of eggs together, some kosher, some not. Tanu Rabbanan, giule veitzim mutaros. What exudes from the egg is permitted. So Rashi tells us exactly what's going on here. Giule veitzim, beitza tmeya. If you have a non-kosher egg, shenisbashla im hatahora, that is top line on Samach Dalet Amabet. Sorry for not giving the location of the Rashi. And it is cooked with a kosher egg. Mutaros hatahorin. Continuing on in the Rashi, in the second Rashi, now second line. The tahar eggs remain kosher. Demaya ba'almahu. That what comes out of the egg that's not kosher, it's just like water. Velo yahave taima and it's not going to bring a taste to the other eggs. Okay, and so as a result, that's going to be kosher. So,
why wouldn't we say batu b'shishim here, for instance? Or is there even basa b'chalab?
Because maybe it's not batel. Maybe the size of the non-kosher eggs is larger than if you have three kosher eggs, three non-kosher eggs, and a relatively modest amount of water. So then it's not going to be, there wouldn't be any bittul b'shishim for sure. So that's the simplest answer.
No, I know, but why don't? In order to make it kosher to eat, we're saying it is kosher.
Because we're saying that what the bottom line is that if the egg shell remains complete, anything that you see come out of that eggshell is not actually considered egg. It's just considered like water. That's the chiddush that we're teaching right now. Okay, beitzim muzaros, an egg that has not had been fertilized by a rooster. So nefesh yafa tochlem, a soul that is beautiful can eat them. What does that mean? Nefesh yafa tochlem. Take a look. Third line in the wide lines of Rashi. Now the last line of the wide lines of Rashi. She'eno istanis. If a person is not so sensitive, because after all, this egg apparently has been sat on by the hen, and even though it will never develop into a chick, it's now not in a classic egg format any longer. Ve'ein daito katzavahem, but a person is not disgusted by it. Tochlaim, he can eat it. Va'af al pi sheyashva aleim tarnagolos yamim rabim, even if the hen sat on the egg for many days, so it's essentially a rotten egg. If that's totally fine, if you can stomach it, you can eat it. Nimsa ala koret dam. If a blood spot is found on it, and of course this is a key Gemara in connection with blood spots. Zorek esadam v'ochel sashar. You can throw away the blood and you can eat the remainder of the egg. Oh, 1 second. Rabbi Yirmiyah says, you know what? That is true, but you got to qualify it. Nimsa al kesher shala. That's where you find the blood spot on the kesher, on the knot. Now, what knot is that talking about? Rashi offers his opinion. First end of the first narrow lines of Rashi. V'husha nimsa adam ala kesher shla. Who zera shel tarnago. That blood spot reflects the sperm that the rooster provided. Hakashur berosh hakad, and the knot is at one end of the round yolk of the and at one end of the rounded end of the egg, shel beitza of the egg, misham yitziras hafroach, and from there, that is where the chick is going to develop. Mitchilat, from the beginning. V'kevan adayin hu sham, since the blood is still there, lo nispazer b'shar habeitza. It's clear that it hasn't spread out into the rest of the egg. Hilkach ochel hashar. Therefore, you can eat the rest. Aval nimtza al hachamon. If you found it in the yolk itself, shala, or on the yolk itself, kula asura, then now all of a sudden the entire egg is prohibited. Kin mefarish lekamen, as we are going to see, deshada tichla b'kula, that its disgustingness has gone into the entire thing. That's the language in the Gemara, and Rashi now translates it. This pashet hakalkul, the yuckiness has spread out the kula into the entire egg, and so that is that is going to be the story. So that is Rashi's explanation of the kesher. Other people have different points on the egg where they say that this kesher is located, and so as a result, generally, if you find a blood spot, you don't you should toss the egg. Thankfully, eggs are not that expensive in our days. Tani dostoi,
yeah, that's today, but about four months ago.
I know. Tana, even then, in terms of a percentage of your income that you spent on eggs, I am sure that the people 3 centuries ago spent a much higher percentage of their income on eggs than we do. Tana dostoi avua de Rabbi Aftoriki. So dostoi, the father of Rabbi Aftoriki, said and taught the following brisa. Lo shanu, not only was our limitation about where you find the blood, but ela shenimsa al chelbon shala, that actually, on some level, disagreeing or putting another kind of qualification, which Rashi already included in Rabbi Yirmiyah's statement, that we're talking about where you find the blood in the white of the egg. Aval nimtza al chalmon shala, but if you find it on the yolk, afilu beitza asura. Well, then the egg is going to be forbidden. My taima, why? Deshada tichla bakula. That the corruption has permeated the entire egg. So Amrle Rav Gavia mibei kosel Rav Ashi ibcha tani tana kameda Abaye. Somebody taught the opposite in front of Abaye. Abaye hu detartza v'ni'ala haki, and Abaye corrected him and told him and responded to him that the way we just read this brisa is the correct way. So again, you find the blood spot in the yolk, you're going to have a problem. You find the blood spot on the in the albumin, you'll be okay. Amar Chizkiah, minayin lebeitzos tmeya shehi asura min Torah. Well, we've been assuming that a non-kosher, sorry for not scrolling. We've been assuming that a non-kosher bird is going to be produce non-kosher eggs. But where? How do you know that? Shenamar ve'es bas hayana. And, well, the Torah says, as one of the non-kosher birds, this is Vayikra Perak Yud Aleph, Pasuk Tes Zayin, where it says ve'es bas hayana. And so what is bas hayana referring to? So it's referring to the daughter of Yana. So just as that is a and so that so the bas yesh la liyana doesn't the yana, which translated here is an ostrich, does it actually have a daughter? Meaning, does it have live chicks, or does it, does it birth live animals? Of course not. It has an egg, a very large egg. Zo beta tamea. So Ella azo. So what is it really referring to when it says bas yana zo beta tamea? That is teaching that the ostrich egg and every other non-kosher bird's egg is going to be tameh. The Dilma Hainu Shmayo, maybe that's actually the name of the bird. Lo Salkadaita, you can't think that. Diksiv, Bas Amila Achzar Kaye'enim Bamidbar. That it says in Eicha, I guess you could call that a Daf Yomi coincidence since we're, we just entered the 3 weeks. So, and at the end of the 3 weeks, we'll be reading Eicha. So, the daughter of my people has become cruel like Ya'anaz in the desert. So there it says, it calls them a Ya'ain, or Ya'anim. And so as a result, we see that the word Ya'ain is used without the word Bas. And so that shows that the name of the animal is actually the Ya'ana. And therefore, when it says Bas Ya'ana, it must be referring to the eggs. Below, 1 second, you're going to tell me that Bas Yana is not the name. I'm going to cite a whole bunch now of places where it refers to Bas Yana. But it says in Micha, Perak Aleph, Pasuk Chet, it says, Esem misped ketanim, the Evel kivnot Yana, that I'm going to make lamentation like the jackals and mourning like Benos Yana. So Benos Yana seems to refer to the animal itself and not the eggs. After all, does an egg engage in any mourning? An egg isn't a live creature yet. So Kayana zo shemisabelas al baneha. No. What it means is that the Evel kibenos Yana is when the mourning regarding the children of the Yana, that the Yana is going to mourn its children. And so that's what that pasuk is trying to teach us. V'haksiv v'shachnu sham benos Yana. But 1 second, it says in Yeshaya, Perak Yud Gimel, pasuk Kaf Aleph, that's where the benos Yana live. And that implies that the benos Yana are themselves live animals. No, kayana zo sheshachones imbaneha. No, it means the yana with its young. And so that's the interpretation. And so as a result, even there, benos yana does not necessarily refer to its own species, but rather to the regular species and its young. Vaksiv, and so therefore it's consistent with benos yana being the eggs. So, v'aksiv b'tichabdeni chayas hasada tanim uvenos yana. But 1 second, in also in Yeshaya, now Perek Mem Gimel Pasuk Kaf, it says that the beasts of the field are going to honor Hashem, and the jackals and the benos yana are going to as well. Now, if you think the benos yana refers to the egg, even if it means the egg with the parent, now it doesn't make any sense. The egg is not going to be able to do praises. Beitza bas meimar shirahi. Can an egg sing praise to Hashem? Of course not. So Ella. So we have to revisit our entire understanding. Ksiv hayana. When it says hayana, uksiv bas hayana. It can write both. Both can refer to the bird itself. So as a result, if both of them can refer to the bird itself, and they're both referring to the same thing, well, then how do you know that in the Torah, when it refers to the Bas Yana, it's referring to the eggs? So, B'shayni Hacha, this case is different. Why is it different? the pasuk safra l'shtei tevot, because the bas yana is written as two separate words. Pasuk lahu safra. Oh, one second. Pasuk lahu safra. As we continue on Samach Heyam and Aleph, Betarti Tevos Shmami Na Trey Shemos Ninu. 1 second. You're going to tell me because it's written as two separate words, without a hyphen, without any kind of connection between the two. Now all of a sudden it's considered two different things. Elamiata as Kadar Laomer. When it comes to the word Kadar Laomer, which at least according to this Gemara, seems to be understood as having been written as two separate words. The pasuk lahu safra betray, that it can be written as two separate words by the Sofrim. So, hachinami the tartishmei ninhu. We should say that these are also two different references. And so, Amrei, no, that's not true. Hasam b'shtei tevos pasuk lahu, b'shnei shitin lo pasuk lahu. Yes, Kadar LaOmer, maybe it would be okay to be written in two separate words, but you cannot separate them on two separate lines. They are one phraseology, and therefore it's one location. But when it comes to the Bas Hayana, that is two separate words that can even be afilu b'shnei shitin nami pasuk lahu. It can even be written on two separate lines, and therefore it is treated as two separate things in the Torah. And the bas of the Bas Hayana can now refer to eggs and can teach us generally that eggs of non-kosher birds are themselves not kosher. And so we will pick up with the continuation of our analysis of this Mishnah and one last discussion in connection with birds, and then we move on to grasshoppers. And so please stay tuned for tomorrow's daf. Wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom. Have a great day. Looking forward to continuing our learning together.
Recorded tomorrow's daf again?
I think that it's going to be live Motzi Shabbos, but keep an eye on the WhatsApp to be sure. Thank you so much. My apologies for the last minute change to starting early today. Wishing everybody a wonderful Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.